Hello and welcome to Tokyo Shutter Speed, where we talk cars and car photography. My name is Rick, and boy do we have something special to share with you today. This is a 1983 Toyota Sprinter Trueno, or more affectionately known as the AE86. But this one here is one of the earliest production models, and it is pretty much stock, which is why I'm very excited to share it with you. Today we're going to take it for a spin, I'm going to show you around the car, and then we're going to find some spots to take some cool photos. Let's go! Oh, beautiful day for a drive. Right, so today we've come up to the Hakone Turnpike, which is about an hour and a half south of Tokyo. It's a toll road that is used basically for having a crack. Right, for those of you that are into cars, you'll probably have an idea of what this one is about. But for those of you unfamiliar with the AE86, or Hachiroku as it's called in Japan, let me give you a quick summary. So this is a lightweight rear-wheel drive car with a sturdy engine that revs to 7,500 RPMs. Now this was a very tasty recipe for racing, and on top of that, apparently Toyota cheaped out on independent rear suspension, which means the rear axle on this is completely solid. Combined with the limited slip differential, this makes it very, very easy to drift. So, it was used in motorsports, where it won a bunch of races.
Over the curb, on two wheels, back down again. The wheels stayed down as he comes out of the second part of the new woodcut.
And then a fella called Keiichi Tsuchiya started throwing around bends on Japanese mountain roads in order to give race fans a little bit more excitement. Basically, popularizing drifting as a motorsport. So, it was respected in traditional motorsport circles, had a massive influence on drift culture, and then it was featured in the hugely popular Japanese anime manga series Initial D. So basically, it's a f***ing legend, an absolute icon of both Japanese motorsport and pop culture. Now, I could go into a lot more detail, but I'm probably not the best person to do that. So I've linked some amazing videos in the description below, which will take you through the history of this car in more detail. Please check them out if you want to learn a bit more. Right, now that that's out of the way, let's have a look at the car, and we'll start with the exterior. The AE86 came in two body types. There was a two-door coupe, and this one, the three-door hatchback. Right, so both of these body types came in 11 version, which had fixed headlights, and this one, the Trueno, which had f***ing pop-up headlights. Right, so we just got told off at our previous location for shooting, so we had to come up here. And in the meantime, the heavens absolutely opened, so the weather's a bit crazy at the moment. But anyway, let's get back to the headlights. Now, I've fallen in love with these headlights. I absolutely love them. They're brilliant. They're just unreal. And I can't understand why modern cars don't have them. Well, I know there are reasons, but I don't want to believe those reasons. I want these. Can you imagine an R35 Nissan GTR with pop-up headlights? And the GTR's got like kind of vertically headlights, so it'd be like some cool little alien with eyes popping out of its head. I'd love it. Right, enough about these beautiful eyes. Let's have a look inside. Now, first of all, the seat is broken, so you have to be careful when you're putting your hand on here getting in. You might touch yourself. Anyway, let's not worry about that. So now we're sat into the car. The driving position is alright, but I'm way too close to the wheel here. And the reason why, because the chair is broken, I can't actually go back any further, so it's a little bit dangerous. But anyway, right, the driver's setup here is awesome. A lot of modern cars have so many things going on around the wheel with all these different stalks and buttons and whatnot. This is literally just the wheel and a little horn in the middle. There's only one stalk on the wheel, and that's your indicator, which is great. It's so clean around the wheel. Great design. And then everything you need is actually up around the gauge cluster here, and it's all nice and symmetrical. You got your wipers here and your lights over here. Awesome. So this was the GTV model, or GT5, not sure how you say it. And apparently this electronic display, digital gauge, was a factory option, and the person who bought this put it in there. Amazing for 1983. Other than that, it's a 5-speed manual. You can fit 3 people in the back. It's got a decent sized boot. And actually the weirdest thing about this car is something that I've never seen before in my life. Can you come over here a little bit? I found this little kind of knob looking thing here when I first got in the car, and I wasn't sure what it was, and then I realized it's a pump, and you just pump, pump, pump. And what it does is it sends air into the back of the seat to give you more lumbar support, I suppose. It's the weirdest thing I've ever seen in the car, and my first time using a pump. Feels kind of nice actually. Right, now that we've had a quick look at the interior, let's take her for a spin. It's so foggy, I can't see a thing. First thing you notice about this car is that sound. Window wipers would be a good choice. It just sounds so bloody good. It's insane. I mentioned earlier that this car is loved all over the world. It has a cult following. And to be honest, I didn't really get all of the fuss until recently. Until I drove this car actually. And it's hard to describe the feeling you get when you sit into this car for the first time. It's kind of like that giddy feeling you get when you sit onto a roller coaster and the bars just come down over your head. It's like you know you're in for a fun time, but you're also fully aware that you could be dead within 90 seconds. If you get in and the first thing you notice, there's no airbags, you know, the doors are about as thick as a slice of bread, and it's super lightweight. You can feel it really like whip around the road, super easy. So on paper, this car really isn't anything special. It only has 130 horsepower and it's 37 years old. But this car in particular, it's full of rust, seats are broken, the air conditioning is broken, a lot of things are kind of a bit all over the place. But, you know, I don't really care. When you think about the front engine, rear wheel drive setup, and the fact that this car only weighs about 900 kilos, this car is just so much fun to throw around. Listen to that sound. It is a f***ing blast. Yes, please. Overall, this is an amazing car. It looks great, it feels great, and even though it's not very fast, it's a blast to drive. Obviously, being this old, there isn't a huge number of these available to buy, but if you do have the chance to buy one, whether you buy one cheap and fix it up yourself, or splash out on one that's already been restored, I reckon it would be a great investment, as these are only going up in value. Fully restored examples here in Japan are going for around 4.5 million yen, which is insane money to pay for a 37-year-old Toyota, but I reckon it's worth it for the fun you'll get from driving it alone. As you can see, pretty atrocious weather. Anyway, gotta get on with it. Gotta embrace the piss. So I got my rain jacket for me and my rain jacket for my camera. Today I'm using a Sony A7 III with Tamron 28-75 lens, f2.8. I chose this one because it's light, pretty bright, 2.8, does the job. I don't have to be changing lenses in this weather, so it's good for me today. I know the weather is terrible, but I think it's actually going to make for some pretty cool photos, because you can see there's a bunch of fog like coming in through the mountain. Like you can't see a thing. So yeah, what we're going to do is we're going to set up our tripod in a couple of different locations, get a couple of different angles of the car, try out a few things at like different focal lengths, because that will give you a different perspective of the car. You know, the way a focal length will like warp the perspective of an image. So yeah, let's get started. Okay, we're set up here on the tripod. I've got the composition that I like, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to play around with a couple of different shutter speeds. I want to get like more of the fog in here, so I think I'll make the shutter speed really slow and boost up my aperture to account for the slow shutter speed. Right. That looks pretty good. Now we're going to change our angle. Going to go front right of the car. What I did just now is I dropped my shutter speed to a really slow speed, then I brought my aperture up to account for that, so the slow shutter speed is able to pick up all this rain and fog and this really kind of misty ninja mountain kind of thing. Yeah, it's good. Gotta keep moving because it's so cold. Gotta keep moving, gotta keep moving. It's so cold. My hands are actually freezing, but it's all part and parcel. Whew. shooting cars, I like to prepare in advance, because a lot of the time you'll only have like one day the car, you know, so you're basically racing against time. whether you're racing against the sun coming down or you have to give the car back at a certain time, and it can be quite stressful. So for that reason, I like to prepare in advance. I like, go on the internet, look at the kind of angles and shots I'd like to get, and make a shot list, and then bring them on the location. That makes things a lot easier on the day. You wouldn't go picking apples without some sort of container to put your apples in. You wouldn't go playing hurling without a hurl, or you wouldn't go to confession without committing a few sins first. So yeah, that's it. Basically, do your prep in advance. It's well worth it. Another thing is, when you're racing against time, you can feel a lot of stress when you're on the shoot. So my advice would be just to chill out, relax, get really zen, and just take your time with all your shots, because if you try and rush things, then you might end up like not getting exactly the shot you want, and then you'll be bummed out at the end of the shoot.
So here are the raw photos as shot, and you can see they look pretty dark, but this is because I like to shoot underexposed so I can pull back the highlights in post. Some people like to shoot multiple exposures and pick the one they like the most, which is probably a safer way of doing it, but I find shooting underexposed works best for me. Now here's the first shot, the side profile. Now I was super excited to get this shot as I love the side profile of this car. I think it's absolutely beautiful, but it actually didn't turn out as dramatic or interesting as I had thought. And this happens. Not all of your shots are going to be great, and that's totally fine. I think maybe one of the reasons the side profile wasn't as interesting as I had hoped is because we're not seeing those pop-up headlights, and I really think they are the standout feature of this car. So if you look at the next shot, you can see this is already way more interesting, and the lights give it more of a dynamic feel, even though the car isn't moving. Here I did some basic edits in Lightroom, added a simple S-curve to give it some contrast, played with the exposure on top and bottom of the frame using some graduated filters to make the car stand out, and then I added a little bit of sharpening to make the car really pop. So for this shot I used a really slow shutter speed to try and capture the rain, but it didn't really get the amount of rain I was hoping for in camera. So I went over to Photoshop and added a little bit of rain with some effects there. In the past I was actually kind of against using Photoshop. I thought everything should be done in camera, but now I've come around to the idea and I'm more inclined to use a bit of Photoshop to enhance certain things. I think the essence of photography is about capturing what you felt in a certain moment, and I think utilizing Photoshop to recreate the emotion and the drama you felt in that moment is completely fine. That's why I also added some lens flares to convey what the lights actually looked like up there in the big thick fogginess. Next I tried some detail shots. Again, the lights are the hero here. And again, I started in Lightroom with some simple adjustments, then headed over to Photoshop to enhance the rain and light with some effects. Now this was my favorite shot of the day. From this front left 3/4 angle, I was able to capture both the headlights and the shape and beautiful lines of the car. And at the same time, I captured the rain, the fog, and the mountain road or touge, which also gave us some really nice leading lines. You can see there are spots of rain on my lens, and some people might hate this, but in this instance I actually really like it, as I think it further adds to the drama and helps you really feel how the rain felt on the day. Here again, I started in Lightroom with some simple adjustments, added an S-curve to give some contrast, played with some graduated filters, some sharpening to make the car really pop, and then I headed over to Photoshop to enhance the lights, add a little bit of rain, and of course delete the license plate, which is very important when you're shooting cars that you're borrowing from people. All in all, a good day's work, and I'm very happy with these shots.
So we just made it back to Tokyo, and what a crazy day that was. The weather was absolutely atrocious. We actually ended up breaking a lav mic because we think it got wet in the rain. But we had a great time. When we were up on the Hakone Turnpike, we got this insane fog coming down on us. We couldn't see like 10 feet in front of the car, so it was pretty terrifying, but it was a lot of fun, and we survived, which was great. We ended up getting some really cool pictures there too. Because of the fog, it just made everything super dramatic, and I think it matched the styling of the car really well. So yeah, that's about it for today, but this is our first time doing this, so if you have any suggestions or any requests for any particular car you'd like to see us feature, let us know in the comments, and we'll see you next time. So depending on your focal length,
変なことするちょっとなんか変なポーズ取りながら写す？
huh?